Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. Intel Xeon and Moneycontrol present Envisioning the Future with AI, security, and cloud united.
Hello and welcome to Intel Xeon and Moneycontrol present Envisioning the Future with AI, security, and cloud united. I am Reema Tendulkar. In today's digital age, AI stands at the forefront of innovation, shaping industries and revolutionizing our daily lives. With its ability to learn, adapt, and make intelligent decisions, AI is driving progress like never before. Fueled by the immense computational power of the cloud, AI processes vast data sets, uncovers invaluable insights, propelling us into uncharted territory. Yet, as our digital footprints expand, the importance of security and privacy becomes increasingly evident. Robust security measures embedded within AI and the cloud safeguards our data, ensuring its integrity, confidentiality, and availability. Together, AI, security, and cloud envision a future defined by limitless possibilities and groundbreaking innovations. And to discuss all this that AI, security, and cloud hold, we have with us Vikram Chauhan, the Director, Enterprise and Government Business, Intel, and Ramesh Lakshminarayanan, Chief Information Officer at HDFC Bank. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Today's discussion, and this is a very wide topic, so perhaps we may be only able to scratch the surface, but wanted to break up this discussion into 4 key themes. The first one is the evolution of digital banking platform, the strategies and how Intel has been a big partner in that. The second one is AI, enabling AI-driven innovation. The third one is cloud transformation. And fourth, how do you make security, an integral part of all offerings? So let me first, touch upon the first topic, the evolution of digital banking platform. And Ramesh, banks have gone through a transformative change, right, over the past so many decades. And technology has been a key enabler of this. So can you talk about HDFC's bank strategy to grow with technology, keeping consumer interest preferences in mind?
So I think it's a very interesting question. In that this is a topical question today. Every bank is going through that fundamental and foundational shift. And I think we'll also have to put a little bit of the country context in mind, because India itself is going through a very interesting phase of digital explosion, so to say. And we are in very exciting times in the way we have digitized our offerings across the country. So the bank is kind of very aligned from that perspective. Clearly, I think getting more and more customers onto the digital platforms. The way we look at the digital is actually in 3 folds. Actually, what we call as basically origination digital journeys, where customers can come and open their accounts, or offer for new products and stuff like that. Then comes the payments part, the transactions part. Day-to-day transactions you do digitally. And the third piece comes in is where you service the customer digitally. I mean, nowadays you don't need to walk into the branch, or you don't need to kind of physically call up a contact center. All of that things changing dramatically, right? So keeping these 3 things in mind, if you look at the bank, we are very clear that each of these segments have to be deeply digitized. Okay, so whether it's kind of origination, whether it's transaction, whether it's servicing. And when you do that, again, one of the foundational strategic principles that we apply while we move to new foundation platforms which are more cloud native, which are kind of driven by containers, microservices kind of architecture. We also call this as our active construct. But what is more important is how do you segment these digital journeys, keeping in mind the target segment that you cannot have one fit all digital strategy for everybody. Right. So as an example, I'll just give you the Gen Z needs on digital, and the way they look at an assisted digital journey is very different from let's say a digital journey that's going in a semi-urban rural area where the needs might be very different. While the channels could be the same, so a WhatsApp could be used on both sides, but the way you deliver your digital journey could be very different. For example, in some of these locations, multilingual could be a very key game changer. Hyper-personalization using, harnessing the power of AI/ML that's coming nowadays, So all of these factors have to be taken into account when you make a digital strategy. So the way we look at it, it's a segmented digital strategy, and then it has to be overlaid with a set of new technology that's coming along. So I think that's how we are going about it. So while we harness the power of the technology, we also segment it by the needs of the customer to ensure that the digital journey is in line with the client needs, actually.
Do you want to share an example on how you're segmenting a particular offering? Say it's to do with payments. You gave an example of WhatsApp. How is your offering differentiated when it needs to cater to a young, savvy population versus, say, some of the older population? Give an example on how you're doing that.
So I'll give you an example. So today, if you look at a young generation, so we recently launched a digital payment application called PayZapp. If you look at it, the focus is around things like, can I do swipe to pay? Can I do tap and pay? Rewards is a very key aspect of how a young generation would look at it. But when you have to look at, let's say, take the same example of, let's say, booking a fixed deposit in a rural area using a business correspondent, right? The journey has to be very different. It could start in a multilingual form. It could be a simple FD booking, which needs some assistance, from let's say, a VLE or a village level entrepreneur that we call, a business correspondent that we call. The needs are different. This is an assisted journey where you need to ensure that security is paramount because there are compromises that can happen on security. The flow has to be critical because it's a two-way flow. It's like an assisted journey, right? So if you look at one side where a kind of a Gen Z is coming and, let's say, doing a tap and pay, and they want to do all of the digital journeys, without any assistance. On the other side, you have places where you need to ensure that there is some kind of assistance that's provided, and in that particular language. Over a period of time, people get used to it, right, on both sides. But you need to have that segmentation very clearly when you're delivering those digital journeys, especially the first time when you look at it.
Interesting. Vikram, shifting consumer preferences has played such a big role in this evolution of the banking system in India. Now, Intel has been a big technology partner to the legacy banks, even to the new age, the fintechs and NBFCs. Can you talk about how you're leveraging the power of technology to help banks?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Rima, for the opportunity. And I couldn't agree more with what Ramesh spoke about. Absolutely. If you look at banks today, I think they are at the heart of any growing economy. And economy grows, bank grows, and they are like symbiotic relationship and what we call mutually reinforcing relationship, right? And today, I think India is one of the fastest growing country in the world and hoping it will continue to do so for next couple of decades.
Banks
right?
are the pillar, technology is the enabler. So if India has to get to that $5 trillion economy, banks are truly the fundamental pillars enabled by technology, which is where you come in.
Precisely, and that is the point. I think the current dream run that banks are going through, we strongly believe that is reason of the kind of transformation they went through in last couple of years. Essentially, what we could not achieve digital transformation last couple of decades was accomplished in last couple of years, specifically around COVID, etc. And today that has made it so robust, as Ramesh spoke about, segmentation, including financial inclusion, how do you cater to Gen Z, etc. But if you honestly ask me, Rima, I think there are 4 critical pillars when you talk about digital banking platforms. Specifically at Intel, what we look upon is, one is going to be your customization or what we call user experience, and second is the omni-channel piece. Right today, I think with you, when you talk about omni-channel, it is more about how do you make it seamless, frictionless banking with most of the customers, right? And that we have most of the time achieved through various means which are there. I think digital payment is one of the best examples we've done. And today, if you ask me, India probably is a step ahead than a lot of developed countries as far as digital payments are concerned. Got options of UPI, APS, BHIM, Aadhaar, NEFT, RTGS, you name it, and it is there. The only piece what we want a little more effort is could be on the retail banking side. Could be what we can do is we've got this traditional ATMs. Can we look at something which is more of AI-enabled kiosk, which what we call is branch of future, or you can encompass the complete branch in one single box, right? And then you can touch it, a kind of an e-avatar, which really helps you to give that human touch, right? It helps you in terms of navigating your customer through a journey, whether it is bank account opening or other pieces. The second important aspect, which I believe, is your user experience. And I think we have progressed leaps and bounds there, but there's still fundamental 4 or 5 things. Do I get the same experience across all the devices? That would be very critical. So I think it is important for us either to look at it as more intuitive, simplistic, transparent, and can I provide the complete services in one single piece? I think those are the factors. The second critical piece, I think, is more on smart and intelligent banking, which Ramesh also touched upon. Today, we've got one of the youngest population on the globe, right, with median age less than 30 years. The only differentiation today what bank makes, and if you look at most of the hoardings, is saying, I give X percentage of interest or I have a mobile banking available. If you look at the folks today, the kind of, and I think I was in one of the roundtable and very interesting anecdote came, today the maximum amount of data if somebody has, it is the banks who have it, right? They know when your salary is going to come, when you spend it, what are the places that you're spending, how many times you go to a specific restaurant, and with digital payment, it could be on real-time basis. Obviously, with consensus of the customer, I think there are a lot of enabling that we can do in terms of spend analysis, right? Where there could be some nudges, there could be some prompts which can help in terms of saying, hey, you can save here or there's some options available. Also in terms of, can we give certain sort of financial advising which could be done by banks with kind of data using AI and analytics. So I think there are a lot of stuff that we can do. There are options on API, open banking. There are options of modular and future-proof banking. But I think, yeah, we are almost there, but we've got a long way to go in terms of digital transformation and digital banking platform.
So you've thrown in a lot of thoughts, right? Like an AI-enabled ATM or a kiosk, smart banking. You spoke about hyper-personalization, which leads me to the next question about integrating AI in all the offerings right now. Now, banks have also increasingly becoming an AI-first industry, and thinking about AI is a continuous process. How are you using AI? In what form and shape?
So I think let me first kind of a little bit demystify, because this AI thing is kind of there all around, right? So I think you also have to be judicious in terms of how you look at a new technology that's emerging. It's not like everything is kind of you just go after it. Banks have been using data, like Graham mentioned. Data is very central to a bank's existence in that sense. And it is not that the banks have not looked at it earlier. If you look at it, there's very interesting. It started with basic analysis, which banks would do, reporting and that kind of stuff. Then you started getting into data warehouses, lakes, and stuff like that. Then you had, classical models. Banks have been using a lot of classical data science model, whether it's in fraud, credit, marketing, and now you're kind of getting into the generative AI space, right? So it's an evolution that's happened. What I see is that there are pockets where you would kind of continue to see the strength of the classical data sciences model. So take an example, a credit model. I think we'll still be very, very careful about being completely unsupervised. Yes, we'll bring that overlay with some models that we have, but it's a kind of a very cautious play. But at the same time, take generative AI. It can be very different for even simplest of the examples. I'll give you a very simple example. Converting your websites into a generative AI, because today just to search a product catalog of a bank on a website is such a tough thing. It's simple, right? Similarly, statement. So one of the biggest resources that the bank carries is the narration on the statements. Why do you even want to go and say, I need to figure out when was my last SI payment happened, or when did I pay my electricity bill on this particular date? It should be less simple generative AI prompt which kind of takes your statement out, right? So I think there are very practical use cases that banks have to build to strengthen this whole generative AI narration. So one is obviously looking at benefits of straight customer-facing benefits like the one I spoke about. Then there are operational aspects of an AI, which is basically looking at, let's say, generating a credit assessment, memo, or you kind of writing summary sheets on some of the corporate bank relationship side. So there are multiple use cases. So it's not just to do with the customer interfacing. Yes, there is a lot of play around that, but there is also operational efficiency. And then you overlay it with fraud and credit, which are classically very strong from a bank's perspective. I think that's how this whole AI story is going to kind of emerge in the banking industry.
One of the interesting opportunities that I read about is JP Morgan is using a chat GPT-like AI service to come up with investment advice, which are tailor-made to you. But you use the word judicious when it comes to AI. Do you want to?
Yeah, look, the same thing, the investment, and take the investment advisory example, right? And we can throw up a model. But tomorrow it has to be very careful in terms of what it is advising, because if it's not trained on very rich data that's very comprehensive, and the accuracy is not good, It can, modern models hallucinate. So you have to be really careful and really ensure that your use case is watertight from that perspective, because you don't want to lead a customer to a wrong decision. Similarly, take fraud, for example. We have to be very careful, both in terms of reducing the false positive, because that can mean that a transaction coming in line can be declined actually, a genuine transaction. At the same time, you have to catch a fraudulent transaction, right? So the models have to be extremely accurate, and that's why it's important that the kind of data science expertise that you get in, it's not just that you only get a data science person and then put him in a bank. You also need domain guys to be sitting with the data science teams and working very closely in getting that rigor around the accuracy of the model. So that's why I said, it's a judicious mix in that sense.
Vikram, banks are the central depositories of not just our data but also our trust. So wanted you to come in on this topic about AI. Now, as Ramesh was pointing out, banks have been using some form of AI for a very long time. But so far, the AI has been used to bring down costs, to bring in some form of productivity enhancements, etc. What about using AI to drive innovation, maximize your top line, revenues? How is Intel working on that?
Absolutely, Rima. I think AI is the one. I think there's no discussion which gets over without AI, and what we call...
it doesn't start without AI.
Exactly. In fact, what we call AI is the new black in tech world, right? I mean, this has been there in play from last 75 plus years, but I think last couple of years, it has tremendously transformed the way the FSI industry is there, right? And in fact, if I'll tell you, the financial services industry is the one which is the fastest and largest adopter of AI. What Ramesh mentioned about, you talk about anti-money laundering, or we talk about eKYC, you talk about risk assessment. There are a plethora of use cases which are there on AI. But actually what has really changed the game in last couple of months is all about your ChatGPT-based LLM large language models, right? In fact, it has opened up new realms of possibility with generative AI. In fact, I was just reading one of the Gartner report which says that AI market is going to be close to $300 billion by 2026. So that's the kind of potential that we're looking at. Now, coming specifically to your question on Intel, I think there are multiple areas that we work very closely with our customers. And as Ramesh mentioned, both from an end customer point of view, as well as in terms of back-end innovation that we can do. One, I think there was a recent announcement based, what our CEO made was on 14 December, it is kind of a watershed moment for us, because we are going to launch our first AI-based PC, right? This is our 14th generation client computing platform, what is called name as Meteor Lake. Now, how does it differentiate is this is the first PC which comes with a neural processing unit, right? So essentially all the AI workloads that was getting processed on the cloud, right? And it has its own limitation in terms of connectivity, latency, and security is like one big black hole, right? That would get addressed because now you will be able to do a lot of inferencing and training locally on your PC itself. So it's kind of a watershed moment for us. Apart from that, there are a number of innovations that we do and work very, very closely with customers on their actual use cases, right? Typically, if you look at the data center, today, a very massive misconception is AI is equal to GPU. But if you look at few of our products line, like 4th Gen Xeon processor, right? It is very much capable of doing both training as well as inference on platform level itself. And we've got a lot of accelerators like advanced metric extension, which can done NLP, or it could be your image recognition on server itself. It does not require any CPUs. But as complexities increases, you're talking of large language model, complex training inferences model, then we've got our Habana Gaudi 2 AI accelerators which are there, and we've got some rave reviews which are there on MLPerf, right, where we are talking about 175 billion parameters in ChatGPT 3. This probably helps beyond that as well, right? So there's so much of innovation happening. Plus, we've got plethora of offerings, whether you talk about HPC, because there's huge convergence of AI and HPC happening. So there we have got certain accelerators, what we call Ponte Vecchio or our Xeon Data Max, which are there. And plus, not only on the product side, Rima, but there's also an equally robust software ecosystem required, and that is what Intel provides. We've got certain suites like OpenVINO, which really works on computer vision, on NLP piece. We've got one API, which is like open standard. unified programming platform, which is agnostic to hardware. So whether you are programming for GPU or CPU, FPGA, for Intel products as well as non-Intel products, you get one single platform which really helps you do it. So I think for our customers end to end, you talk about any use cases, I think Intel is in front and center, working very closely hand in hand with our customers on those AI challenges which are there and trying to solve it through our products and solutions.
Do you want to share some examples on where Intel is collaborating directly with the client to come up with, certain solutions or services, platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a few of them which are both global as well as our Indian customers. But typically, our endeavor, Rima, has been on a couple of cases. One is specifically on anti-money laundering part, because that is one case where a lot of banks have got huge false positives, right? When you talk false positive is when you go through anti-money laundering, you got huge number of lists where there's a regulation where you need to sift through each of them and then report back to RBI saying whether were they right or not, which requires huge backend. But today you've got so much of sophistication in AI, which reduces those false positives very drastically and making you much more secure, much more risk averse, which is there. Plus, as Ramesh was mentioning, there are a lot of use cases on credit assessment, on credit card points, using your big data, etc. But large number of cases on AI that we work with our customers across the globe.
Okay, now let me move on to our third topic for the day, which is modernizing the core and cloud native applications. Ramesh, was it tough for you to move HDFC Bank, which is a legacy system, legacy applications? Was it tough for you to modernize, move to cloud, develop applications on it?
So I think, first of all, contextually, I think it's not just the HDFC Bank structure. See, legacy systems have been part of the banking ecosystem. I always say banks were almost about 10 years behind, about 5-6 years back, if you look at it, compared to the adoption of other industries from a legacy construct perspective. And why is it that? And this is a very, very topic close to my heart. I've spoken about it quite a lot. Is the fact that banks adopted what is called as a monolithic RDBMS architecture, where every single transaction will come to a single database finally. And everything was hunky-dory until about 2015-16, because it was the digitization was still at its nascent stages. UPI came and changed all of that, right? So suddenly, the floodgates, and this has not happened anywhere globally. This is a very unique phenomenon to India, where the TPSs moved from sub-hundreds to 1,500 kind of TPSs in a very short period, right? And the legacy architecture that you referred to was not legacy, but it was built on a monolithic architecture, which means you have to write at one place at the same time. So imagine millions of transactions hitting the same database. So you could have a 5 rupee UPI debit coming in, and you could have a 10 billion treasury transaction coming, both waiting the same database, right? And this is classically called as monolithic architecture. And banks had to clearly move away from that to what I call as an active architecture, which means you're writing the data in 2 different places at the same time. This is not easy because it kind of goes against something called a CAP theorem, which is a very interesting part when we kind of grow up on studying databases. So I think that is a fundamental shift. And to do that, first of all, you have to go to cloud native architecture. Then you basically go on to a relational database that can give you that kind of an active architecture. And that shift is not easy. Which is where I think we kind of started a program, very interesting program, and I'm very passionate because I think that is the holy grail for the bank to transform, is to see if you can hollow the core. See, transforming and changing the core is not the answer, because at some of the scale and the size that you do, if you want to get a new core banking, it can take years actually to implement, and that nobody has that kind of a time. And the architectures of today changed very nicely to what we call as microservices-led architecture. So microservices-led architecture and active construct, on databases can lead to a very optimized hollow the core in a way that you shift in batches actually. Okay. And that's what is happening now. So what we are doing is we clearly kind of pulling out customer master, we are pulling out payments, we're pulling out statements, we're pulling out charging modules. So module by module, you're kind of taking it out. And by doing this, what we see is, and I've spoken about it very clearly, the banks have always had core at the center of their architecture. Everything in the banking architecture will finally, the center would be actually the core banking. Now with this decoupling happening, which means a lot of microservices coming through, what is the new paradigm? The new paradigm is the data is sitting at the center. So because the data is sitting in the center, you can look at it from one customer perspective. So you are not treated like a product. You're not a credit card customer. You're not a retail assets customer. You're not a branch banking customer. You're actually a customer of the bank. And so you can onboard somebody centrally on a single platform, and then you start, hooking on to the product. Now, this kind of a construct is very different from traditional core banking. And that is where I think the whole foundational change of what I call as follow the core program is very, very critical for us. We are on the journey. We are not yet there, but we are very, very, very actively pursuing. And this is something that we believe will be the future of our transformation, so to say.
So how much is left, right, from this monolithic architecture to hollowing the core to achieving the modern infrastructure bank? How much of this journey
it's a journey which would take about, to my mind, about 3 to 4 years. Right now, we're probably about 30% into it. We have started. In fact, recently, just to give you a little bit more perspective how engineering happens, UPI payments, I spoke about, one of the biggest load creators, so to say. And it's a very spiky connection. Why is it a spiky connection? Because a match would start at 3:30 and everybody will get on, in terms of putting onto a particular gaming platform. 7 o'clock, you will see a very sharp increase in the traffic. And behind that, you have a monolithic core banking, which is kind of looking at connections coming from all the sides, and it's spiky, right? So what you need to do, so we in fact did a very interesting platform called Governor, which we recently built. We put it between the core banking and the UPI switch, and this is like a stabilizer. So it kind of, what it does, it's like a voltage stabilizer. So whatever happens on the left side, the right side is clean actually. Okay. So your core banking can take that cushion. So that was the first component that we put across. We're now going across and looking at pulling the payments out. So I think the work is kind of truly on. Step by step, I think every 6 months we are looking at a new module to come in. And as we build this journey, I think 3 to 4 years time, we would be, the core is left to be only a statement of record, And the data lake comes at the center of the ecosystem, which is powering the AI ML cases that you spoke about. So from there, you can feed the data into every single product processor that in a very, transparent and very simple way, rather than kind of making it complicated. So data is the center of the new architecture, so to say.
Quite complicated, right? Vikram, how is Intel helping banks in this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll just try and double click on what Ramesh spoke about, monolithic architecture. You go a layer below and they are all based on Unix system, right? So Unix system were one which are very widely adopted for all mission critical. So I think there are 3 verticals which are like big on that. One was banking, second was manufacturing, third was telecom. I think telecom has already exited from it. Manufacturing did it with SAP. Now the only last bastion which is there is banking. And typically if you look at India, I think there are 3 core banking service providers which are there, around which all these 3 things hinges. Now, as we move on, probably I think we've seen a lot of innovation and advancement happening from each of the banks. So typically they've started moving from monolithic risk-based architecture to more open x86-based Linux architecture, right? That's where the complete innovation piece is there. Slowly but steadily we are there, right? So they started moving from database and application are one, which already started moving on x86. And as Ramesh mentioned, I think we already have few of the use cases amongst bank where we have moved applications on microservices, hyper-converged infrastructure as well. Slowly and steadily, we'll also move the database, and there are a lot of options available. I think earlier there's a lot of apprehension in terms of saying it is mission critical, 5 nines, etc. Will x86 architecture with Linux able to do it? I think it is proven time and again. Probably if you look at the 3 largest public digital infrastructure in the globe are from India, right? And they are all working on x86 architecture. I think we've come a long way in terms of both performance as well as RAS features. So today, anything which is critical in nature like core banking is very much capable on x86 along with your Linux platform. And in fact, if you look at few of our product lines which are there in terms of scalability, right? We are one of the only platforms available which has capability to scale from single socket to 8 socket and beyond. So anything which is monolithic in nature, we do support that as well. Anything on a distributed architecture as well on cloud is very much supported. So we are there in the both worlds, there to really navigate and make a bridge between the previous legacy one and the newer, modern technology-based architecture.
Do you want to quickly tell us, what has been the benefits that you have that have yielded to the bank, courtesy moving to cloud?
Yeah, I think a lot of benefit, Rima. In fact, just to give a couple of examples, which are very interesting, right? Look at our contact centers. Earlier, what would happen when you call the contact center? You would hit an IVR, you would kind of on the tree for some time, dial 1, dial 5, and then you get onto an agent. By the time you get onto agent, it's like so. We recently kind of completely revamped by bringing in a cloud-native architecture and what we call as a unified customer experience hub. So if you call our contact centers today, you will actually be greeted by a bot. You will be spoken to by a bot. A lot of stuff, whether it's blocking cards, taking statements out. You can try English, actually, it will respond back in English. All of that we were able to achieve. So what it's done, it's kind of suddenly the deflection to the agent, the call deflection to the agent has dramatically come down. So we can use our employee for far better engagement models, so to say, right? It's a complex query. You can engage with the customer more, deeply. This would not have been possible had it not been a modern cloud-based microservices architecture. Why? Because suddenly the call volume spikes. You can kind of spin up the containers and kind of bundle the load. Nighttime, you don't want that load. It can kind of scale down. So this is one example that I've given. The other example that I've given is that we've done some very fabulous digital launches. If you see, we have now a very interesting express car loan program where we actually disburse a loan in 30 minutes into the dealer's car account. So you can just choose a car, go to the dealer, and it's an instant kind of settlement. And an auto loan is a very, very complicated product. And we've been able to completely integrate with the partner ecosystem in a very seamless way today. And we're kind of now doing fairly about 30% of our new cards come only from this digital distribution platform. We've done some very interesting stuff on rural digital distribution. Just built an application called Smart Sarthi, where any village level employee, who's kind of sourcing for the bank as a business correspondent. It used to be very difficult because the PC won't work, the platform on it was not very good. We just built something called a bank in a box, actually. So what can be done is the entire assisted journeys. You can onboard the Vele digitally. You can do all the digital journeys and assist seamlessly. And all of this has been again built on cloud at scale. They've used microservices. They've used cloud native architecture. They've used the entire bot that I spoke about. It's completely AI ML driven. So a lot of work has gone in kind of getting the dialects right, the tone right, because India is not easy to from a language recognition perspective. So we see some of these are very at scale kind of applications that have gone into cloud. These are not small, let's say an HR or a finance application that's usually put on cloud. These are actually core applications that are moving.
Helping with the business growth, the transformation there. Let me now move on to the fourth topic, that's enhancing data security. Now, every time you think of money, the first thought is my money going to be safe, right? Now, this rise in technology also to some extent promotes potent threats. At HDFC Bank, how are you enhancing security?
I think this is the most pertinent question, Rima, of all the things that you spoke about, in the sense that, when we look at the strategy, security somehow is an afterthought, actually. And that's the sad part, because for banks, the trust is the number one, I think, driver for any business, right? And nothing beyond trust. You trust a bank because you think that the money will be secure there. And if you see in India, there are two aspects to the security, if I look at it. One, at the enterprise level. So how are you protecting your perimeters, your firewalls? How are you protecting your data centers? And there is a lot of activity happening. We usually follow an architecture called zero trust architecture, which is coming in very nicely, which means right from the beginning, the transaction comes into the perimeter. How do you track it down? It's a bit like when you go to a hotel. And let's say you want to meet some guest, or you go to a corporate office and you want to meet some guest, you actually get escorted all the way into the room and then are brought back. That is the level of trust of security that you need. So every packet that goes in has to be assisted and then go to that particular destination server and come back. this is pretty much what is called the zero trust architecture. And so it's a lot of focus happening here. We've been enabling very interesting features, and we just recently kind of done a lot of work around using cloud native security platforms. We have used AI ML based security softwares, which are kind of what we call as XDRs, typically EDR XDRs, and again they're driven by AI ML. Our SOC operations, so any pattern that comes in. See, we are also a systematically important bank, so we see a lot of geopolitical kind of risk coming through. Any of these kind of attacks coming in, we have a 24/7 AI ML led security operations center that actually kind of, you are able to kind of catch these patterns. That's what we do on the enterprise, but that's something that's not seen outside. But there's a lot of stuff happening on security on the common man side, and especially our consumers. With UPI and some of the digitization that's happened, the frauds have also gone up, right? It's a very interesting, we see all the time, these gangs getting busted in many cities in India, and that's a reality. Our senior citizens are very, very gullible today. It's very unfortunate. And I think that's an area that we are very committed. So we have done very, clear, actionable items here. For example, our mobile app today is led by a platform called RASP, actually. So you cannot mirror our mobile apps. You've also done a lot of security engineering inside our mobile apps to ensure that they're secure. But it's a problem that's a larger problem. And I keep seeing social engineering at the center. So you can keep putting walls and security apparatus, but it's also to do with social engineering. So a lot of education has to go in terms of telling the customers that what is the right thing. I mean, it's so prevalent. Just to give you a little example, today, there are gangs that run simple stuff like you can game a hospital, dial-in number. It looks like a genuine hospital. You call the number, you actually get an appointment form. And these forms, for example, have some, APKs inside. And these APKs actually do SMS forwarding, because the minute you do your SMS forwarding, you're done and dusted. Nothing that you can do about it. But how do you recognize that something like that has come into your phone? So your ability to keep your phone secure from these ransomwares, these malwares coming into the phone apparatus is very critical. So I think there's a lot of effort. So while banks continue, and like us continue to kind of invest into security, I think the education aspect is extremely critical as we get more and more digitized. And then that also needs a lot of multilingual, a local language touch. I don't think we should just kind of look at urban city and look at that as the only aspect from a customer education perspective. So we are taking initiatives. We ran a very interesting vigilante program that you would have kind of seen in many languages actually. And we definitely want to more and more, participate. We're also participating the regulator very, very closely. We are working, again, Google has been another association. You would have seen recently a lot of ads where we've kind of, again, partnered with them. So I think there's a partnership model also to come to educate. And I think all the technology stack players, all of them have to come into this.
No, I agree. Customer education is paramount. Vikram, in this journey, along with banks, is also a service provider like Intel. And Intel has been making rapid strides in, increasing its offering, giving better offerings when it comes to security. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Absolutely, Rima. In fact, I think security, we are at an inflection point where you've got several technologies which are coming up, which are advancing, be it AI, intelligent edge, or we are talking about your blockchain and so on and so forth. Now, typically what Ramesh spoke about, if I can divide into two parts, right? One is your enterprise and second is the client piece. Now, enterprise, I think most of the organizations have adopted this zero trust security approach, which Intel complements through our various technologies, right? And that is where we've bought into front is our confidential computing. What it really does is most of the times what you talk about data and what Ramesh gave analogy of somebody escorting it, right? Till now, security was very much attached to either my data which is at rest or whether my data which is in flight, which is moving. What we've done is we've gone step further apart from those two security aspects is what happens when your data is getting processed, right? And that is where we've got some interesting technologies like Intel software guard extension, which protects the data whenever even it is processed through complex technologies like creating enclaves, hardware-based attestation, etc. Now, what it really helps, if you look at the practical use of it, it really helps a lot of multi-party collaboration which happens between your fintechs and banks. What we speak about API banking, what we talk about digital banking, right? When you use PhonePe or Paytm, essentially it's still going to hit the bank server, right? How do we create that platform of trust? It could be done through things like SGX, right? In fact, we've seen a lot of use cases not only for digital payment, but we also seen it for eKYC. The kind of KYC if bank has done, can fintechs leverage them and can use them? And this will be very critical when we talk about digital banking platform, right? Where your API banking and open banking will be dependent on this fostering of multi-party collaboration. So that's one piece that we do. Apart from that, if you look at Rima on the data center side as well, we've got a lot of accelerators which are inbuilt on the products that we try and give. So for example, we've got encryption-based accelerators called Intel Quick Assist technology. So whatever that you're trying to do on a server level, whether it is encryption, decryption, signature, hashing, it does not need to put that load on your regular CPU. It can still does it work on application and database. All the security part is taken care by these accelerators. That's more on the data center piece. The second aspect, I think what Ramesh spoke about was more from endpoint perspective, which is mobile. So specifically from Intel point of view, I think the clients that we are using, there are a lot of innate features which are inbuilt. I mean, obviously these are all silent heroes which work in backend and nobody realizes about it, but there's so many technologies. For example, there's something called crypto jacking, which has recently come, right? It does not steal your data. It only takes advantage of your resources to do crypto mining. And there are very few softwares who are able to do it. But now with Intel, we've got a lot of hardware-based technology, which actually, based on the scanning, can figure out saying either your memory or GPU is getting overutilized, and then tries and really knocks the software guy saying, can you please come in? And what we do at Intel, I mean, no company can really claim that they've got end-to-end security. So essentially, our effort is to get a hardware-based security which is compatible, which can be used with the existing ecosystem partners which are available, right? Which could be customizable, which could be scalable, which could be configurable, and you can update it on a very regular basis. So I think there are a lot of new technologies which are coming on client side as well to keep your data safe from obviously the malicious world of hackers, etc. But tons of technology and a lot of work that we are doing with a lot of banks, customer, and specifically FSI customers.
Thank you very much, Ramesh and Vikram, for joining in. This has been a great conversation, lots of valuable insight. And in the last 30-40 minutes, we've navigated through the interplay of AI, security, and cloud, glimpsed the potential that they hold. This journey has been illuminated, the path to a future where technology transcends its own limits, where innovation is boundless, where data protection and accessibility is paramount. The synergy of AI's intellect, fortified by robust security measures and enabled by cloud's expansive capability, sets the stage for a remarkable era of progress. We're merely scratching the surface of the possibilities that await. We'll be back with more on Intel Xeon and Moneycontrol present Envisioning the Future with AI, Security and Cloud United. Thank you very much for watching.
Intel Xeon and Moneycontrol present Envisioning the Future with AI, Security and Cloud United. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.